Hello and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Trezero.
And this week we have a very interesting episode for you. So, it's a remake, but it's a very interesting. It's something we've not really done before, right? Well, let's just say it. It's Blazing Saddles and Paws of Fury, which I'm sure you're like, why the fuck are you doing these? These are super different movies. Why would you have a conversation about these two films? Paws of Fury is a remake of Blazing Saddles.
Which, I did not believe it. So your boyfriend, Eric, had, texted us and was like, hey, you guys should do this. And I was like, wait, are those even related? And he was like, yeah, it's a remake. And everything that I've read says it, because I was like, I have to verify this. Not that I don't trust Eric, because Eric's right about everything all the time, always. But I was like, oh my God, it just sounded too weird. And so everything was like, it's a loose remake. But it's actually a lot truer than I thought. Beat for beat,
it's not a loose remake.
On some of these things.
It is a family remake, is all it is.
Yes.
It is. Because similarly, I was like, oh, maybe they had to say that because the story structure is a little similar. No. Some of the lines verbatim, with the exception of the racial epithets, are word for word, nearly identical.
And Mel Brooks also helped write it and starred in it, of
and he's
course.
In it. Yeah.
So I was just like, what the fuck is this movie?
What I know, and that's why I'm so excited to talk about it, because it is Blazing Saddles history as being a wild Mel Brooks film, specifically because of the conversation around racism and the words that are used in describing the story of the other. But holy shit, it's that and a version of Kung Fu Panda.
That's exactly it. Yes.
And so you're how can these be the same? How can these be similar? How did we do? And we're going to talk about it, but it is a very interesting truth that these are the same movie.
I know. I hope that our listeners are like, wait, I'm so, I hope you're having the same reaction that we did to what the fuck? But yeah, Eric, what is your history with Blazing Saddles?
My history with Blazing Saddles, it's really more of a history with Mel Brooks. This is our second Mel Brooks movie that we've done. We did The Producers. And so this is similar history. Spaceballs was huge for me, but I think I only saw the beginning of Blazing Saddles as a kid, and I was so confused because it's even watching it for this podcast, I was like, whoa, what are we doing here? This is a lot.
Yeah.
And I really hope it becomes more integral to the story and there's justification for what we're watching here, because this is kind of fucking wild. And so my history with it, I just knew that it was one of the more gratuitous and more wild Mel Brooks movies for my experience with the first scene, and then just from what people have said, oh yeah, Blazing Saddles is a little rough, just know that. And I was like, okay. With this newly found context for it, though, I do have a lot to say about it, and I have a lot more complex opinions about it than I'd had previously, but I'm excited to talk about it. What is your history with Blazing Saddles?
Yeah, similar to you. I mean, in one of my previous positions, everybody just talked about Mel Brooks all the time. So it was Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles and The Producers and Spaceballs. Literally everything these men could and would quote these movies literally every single day, all the time. And those were they were trying to make it their catchphrase or something, right? So I was just okay, men love Mel Brooks, right? Straight white men love Mel Brooks was what I thought for a long time. I don't think I had seen the beginning of it, or at least not remembered it. I do think that one of my exes made me watch it, and I know that I've seen certain pieces of it, certain parts stuck out to me, but I think I blocked out a lot of the I knew it was very racist, but I blocked out a lot of things. So I remember the ending, right, with how the brawl goes forward and things. And like, of course, I remember some of the lines because people would just repeat them forever in perpetuity. But yeah, as I can't say I had a big connection other than this is a movie for these old men that I work with.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, so yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't have a lot to go on. So going into this was really interesting.
Yeah, same. I feel like I'm happy that I watched this movie when I did, right? I'm happy, and I'll go into detail as to why that is, but like, I am happy that I watched it at this age now with my opinions as they stand and the knowledge that I have, because there's a lot to say about this movie. Like, with all of that in mind, there is so much to say about Blazing Saddles. So I'm really excited that we're getting to talk about it.
And I'm glad that I was able to form my own opinion, because I feel like there's a lot of times where just I'm told something is good. And so in the pop culture ethos, like, you know, Mel Brooks is amazing and this is amazing. And there's not really a lot of nuance there. And people like tend to like overlook things or be like, oh, well, historical accuracy and things like that. But I'm glad that we watched this and I get to talk to you about it right now in where we're at. Yeah,
exactly. It's going to be good. Should we do it?
Let's do it.
Okay.
While building a railroad in 1874, a clash arises between railroad workers and their handlers, which leads Bart, a black laborer, to death row for assaulting a white man. During this altercation, it's discovered that quicksand lies in the railroad's path. As a result, railroad tycoon Hedy Lamarr makes plans to redirect the track through the town of Rock Ridge and force the current residents from their homes. After his first few attempts fail, he convinces the governor to appoint Bart as the new sheriff, hoping the town's racism will cause chaos, allowing his thugs to take the town.
After a less than welcoming welcome party, Bart makes friends with a drunken prisoner known as the Waco Kid. The town residents continue to be hostile towards the new black sheriff until he outwits and befriends an outlaw named Mongo, sent by Hedley to cause trouble. Slowly, Bart begins to win the hearts of the town and performer Lily von Stupp, another person sent by Hedley to take down Bart. Frustrated, Hedley recruits every bad guy he can find, but Bart and the Waco Kid find out his plans, recruit Bart's friends on the railroad, and set a trap for his new goons. The trap works and quickly turns into an out-of-hand brawl that spills out into the other sound stages in present-day Hollywood. Eventually, we get back to the Old West where the bad guys are caught and the good guys go ride their limo into the sunset. Slay. So, Blazing Saddles. First and foremost, our opening scene is rough as fuck. I forgot how intense racially this was. It's like every other word is like a racial epithet, either the N-word or the C-word or something. And it's by these like white colonizers. And I'm happy that there is a point to it by the end of the movie, right? Like, I think overall, my biggest takeaway from this, as a whole, as an idea, obviously doing it now, like I would never condone like white writers writing this story, but them writing it as a necessary portrayal of like, these men are shit. All of these white people are bad. Yes. And at every point in this movie, they're going to be buffoons. They're going to be clowns. They're going to be the most physically, mentally, and sillily stupid characters we can portray. The ones who are saying all of these crazy rough words and treating everyone else poorly, they are going to be the butt of the joke at every turn. And we're going to make it so fucking clear that every one of those people is bad. And they are the bad guy. They are the evil in this movie. Yes. That's the point, right? And I didn't know that previously going into it. But like, I mean, I can't even get over how funny I thought this was given the context. But like, when Bart shows up in town as the sheriff and they're like, wait, he's black, and by black I mean they say the other word. He shows up and they're like ready to kill him on the spot, but he's like, oh, what if I just took myself hostage? Then this whole conversation around like they have sympathy for him now because somebody is being taken hostage by a black man. So they're like, wait, no, don't do it. We have sympathy for you now because this black guy is taking you hostage when it's him who's being taken hostage. And so there's this like silly moment of them being like, wait, no, don't shoot him. It's just him with a gun to his own neck. Further displaying how stupid and how inane these thoughts and these like ignorant mindsets are in this town. And he runs into the other room and just like takes the gun away. He's like, Jesus, like they're so stupid. Like they're so dumb.
And I feel like that first scene, going back to that, like was incredibly rough. Like if you know nothing about Blazing Saddles, be ready to be accosted verbally and to be uncomfortable.
It's wild. It's like really
wild.
Bizarre.
And I think the way that the scene plays out, because it's like, oh my God, am I really hearing this? And they're like, the white people are trying to get, you know, the black people to sing for them like they were when they were slaves, right? And they start to sing, and the song that they do is a contemporary song, but like they have like these like harmonies, and it's like so well performed, and like, you know, like there's depth and culture and performance and like feeling to this song.
It's like a 9-part harmony. It's gorgeous.
It's incredible. And then the white guys are just like, nah, that's not what we mean. We mean like I've been
working on the railroad. It's like,
and they're all just like dancing around off harmony, sounding so dumb and so buffoonish. Everybody is doing whatever, and they look just like so messy, so silly, so like they have they're just the silliest characters. And it's like, okay, we know where this is going. Like, and I think that was really important if they were going to use these words, these racial epithets in literally every scene as much as humanly possible. And because we need to, if that part was not there, and if Mel Brooks didn't use every single moment that a white person is on screen, except for Jim, the Waco kid, if he did not use every single chance to make sure that we know that they are wrong and they are bad in literally every scene, I
mean, granted, there's obviously a way to do this without doing that. I think there's an explicitness to how perverse and how caustic these words are. Like, there is an explicitness to it. Like, the overuse of it is explicit. Again, reiterating time and time again, even these moments where the characters are like, I kind of like you now. Or like, hey, like that lady at the window, like, hey, thanks for saving our town. Here's an apple pie. Sorry for calling you the N-word earlier, even though you are an N-word. You're like, what? Oh my! But it's reminding us, like, these are still shit people. They're still bad. And I like that Jim, as the only white guy here, who's like, no, these people are terrible. They're awful. They're scum. And like, even Bart, there's times where like Bart's gonna go off and like, oh, I have an idea for something. He's like, wait, no, don't do that, because you know that this is gonna happen. He's like, fuck, you're right. They're too stupid to get this. He's like, that is correct. You have to play stupid with stupid people to get them to do what you want, which we see time and time again with Bart, right? He holds himself hostage to keep from being shot. He sends a fucking candygram box bomb to Mongo, and it blows him up. Like, he believes it, and they're all just like, wow, a candygram. Like, they're stupid, small, stupid, ignorant people. And the only way to like win or to get them to see anybody as people is to play their silly little stupid game.
He built a toll road to slow them down when they could literally go like around them, right? And it's so like his ingenuity and his ability to like, you know, have to exist and cope and be around these people. Like, it's obviously evolved out of necessity, right? But in him like doing these, it's like, obviously these white people are bad. Every single white person, again, except for Jim, Jim is the only one that's like, hey, how's it going? Oh, you're a black sheriff. Okay, cool. He never uses the N-word. He never like, you know, slights his race or anything. He just asks him about himself, you know? Bart does in turn, instead of like being like, oh, well, I have a criminal here. Like, he's like, hey, what's going on? He's like, oh, well, I'm an alcoholic because I did this. And he's like, man, that's rough. And I like that Jim is there, but he's also not the one that saves the day. And
Yeah.
he's not the one that is, centered in the story really ever. He is literally just there as a sidekick. And I think that, again, if this is the way that we're going to tell this story, I think that was really a absolutely necessary choice.
Agreed. And the fact that like Jim's character and Jim's performance, the idea of Jim, the Waco kid in the story, is so necessary just in terms of like reiterating and reinstilling the intent of this movie and what it's trying to do. And I'm so happy he's there because as soon as he comes in and we see their budding friendship start to happen, it's like, yes, this makes more sense. It's still a hard movie. It's still a rough watch. We could have still done without the 100 N-words. Like, fuck, like it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Studio executives were even like, I don't like this. Like, you need to take out the use, like the profane use of like the N-word. You need to take out these scenes. But ultimately in the contract, Mel had final say on everything and didn't do anything. He's like, oh yeah, I'll take that out. And the only thing he took out was something that furthers the racial stereotype about black men having big dicks, where Lily Von Stroop is like, trying to seduce him, and she's like, oh, okay, like, talking about his dick supposedly, but right after, like, in that same scene, he's like, you're sucking on my elbow or something, and I thought that would have been good to leave in, but
yeah,
was that the one thing that he took out? We'll never know.
Yeah, I mean, because it also like goes back to like, is this Mel Brooks' story to tell in this way? I don't think so, but I think in general it works because of the intent. Again, I don't condone it. I don't agree with it necessarily, but in the context of the story, I do think that it aids in providing how contextually scummy, shitty, and ignorant everybody in this town is, and it further pedestals Bart and Jim's relationship in a way that I think wouldn't have happened without it. Again, not saying it's like good or should have happened, but it makes it a more complex story just in this context alone. I want to go back to the does anybody have a dime bit where they're all running into that like little gate. There's nothing around it. They could go around it very clearly, and it is such a funny little slapstick beat because the gate shuts at like a one horse per like through gate. Like it's super duper little in the middle of the desert, and they're like, fuck, the gate's down, how do we get through this? And it says like a dime slot, like a dime per person. Like, does anybody have a dime? Like, fuck, we need to go back and get money to like go through
also
this.
A dime at that time was like
a lot of money.
So much fucking money. Like,
and I like this in two ways, right? Like, I think as a bit, it's very funny because it reinstills how stupid these men are, how stupid this community is, and how, like, they're so dumb and they don't get it, and that's just the case. But in a second context, around the conversation about, like, institutionalized racism and institutions of privilege, of white supremacy, and of patriarchy, it is such an apt metaphor in the constant reiterative way that these communities of white men predominantly cannot see beyond the bounds of these fake constructions of power. Like, we have to follow these rules because that's just the way it's been, and we cannot look around it. We cannot go around it. We have to go through it. It's the only way through. There's no other way of thinking. This is the only way we can do this, and blah, blah, blah. And so it's a metaphor for, like, the lack of critical thought and the imbued just seeping ignorance of these people and the complete unwillingness to consider any other option as a metaphor for like institutionalized racism. I think it's fucking genius.
Yeah.
Like, because
absolutely.
Obviously it's a movie that's built on that idea of these backwards people being shit, and then suddenly they're placed in this very simple predicament. It works in both ways. And I think it's like, when it happened, I just was like, that's fucking genius. That's so funny, but also like exactly what you're trying to say with this movie. And I think like it to me, that moment was like, yes, okay, I know exactly why they're doing this. I know exactly what this is. This is a social commentary comedy in the way that Mel Brooks does, like, right? Because we've seen it in his other films, but like, I don't know. I'm not much of a Mel Brooks head or enough of one to say this completely, but I don't know if necessarily his other movies have been so socially conscious in the way that this is so like adamantly like, nope, these people are stupid and wrong and bad. That's the story. Have a great day. You know what I mean?
There's literally a line where Headley or whatever says, with the most enthusiasm, yes, rape the women. That's so creative. And the line before that was like, this bandit is like, or murderer, rapist, all of that is listing his qualifications to be employed by Headley to go and destroy the town. And he's rape, arson, murder, rape. And he's like, oh, you said rape twice. I like rape. Like, or maybe it's not in the same scene, but I mean, like, that's like, oh, yes, of course. This is wonderful. This is great. You know, let's kill everybody. Let's do this. Like, there's literally a scene where Headley is like, he has a statue of the Lady Justice and he's fondling her. He's like caressing her boobies with his eyes closed. And
hilarious.
Like perfect.
Disgusting patriotism, you fool. Like, it's so and even the bit where they're like, oh, we're gonna steal this land. Oh, you mean we're gonna trade for it? It's like, yeah, what are we trading it for? These. And it's like paddle balls, which is a commentary on like the manipulation of colonial early Americans who came and stole land and like just crafted genocide. But in the same conversation,
and he's like, we gave them toys.
We gave them toys, and it's a conversation on that. But then even then, it's like, oh, those silly little idiots who don't know that, like, oh, what we're doing is blah, blah, blah. He takes that paddle ball, a simple child's toy, and he himself cannot manipulate it in the right way. A simple toy. This man who thinks he's so much smarter than anybody can't even play with a child's toy correctly.
It's supposed to be played for pen away.
Yes. It's supposed to be played as like a comedic beat, but it is like the perfect two-hander of like, yes, it's a joke, but also this is true amongst the men who created this country and the men running this country. This is a fact. This is true. These men are fucking children, and they are so bad and ignorant and so maliciously disgusting. Like, yes. And I was like, yeah, it's very smart.
Yeah, and I think it was also really smart. I mean, there's two women in this film, literally two. I mean, there's like the old lady that you talked about, right? But there's the secretary and Lily von Stroop. And the secretary, when we're talking about like white women and like their positions and where they are in their status and their objectification and what they are to men, and they exist for men to use as they see fit, right? So we have the secretary who is literally just there for sex. She gets this urgent telegram from last Friday that she like doesn't even bother to read, that's like literally asking for help, talking about somebody being bombed at church, right? And she's like, I couldn't care less, right? She's just there to fuck the governor. And then we have
well, we also find out later that she's a literal Nazi, which is a really interesting turn, just in terms of like, she's the only German character that we're seeing, and then in the brawl she's hanging out with literally uniformed Nazi servicemen.
Wait, the secretary?
Oh no, sorry, I thought you were talking about Lily von Stroop.
Oh, no, I was talking about, that was the secretary. But Lily, I was going to go into Lily.
Oh, yes. Okay, cool.
Lily is, she's this woman who literally her whole life and her whole everything is based around objectification and men and how they view and see and use her, right?
Yeah.
And that's why she, decides that, sure, I'll seduce this person. And then supposedly she's like changed and reformed and all. But yeah, you're right. Like there's like that scene where she's like, oh, hey boys, how's it going?
at the end, because granted, yeah, like nothing has changed. She's just this like double agent. And then during the brawl, she's like hanging with her buddies who are all in SS uniforms. Like, come on, it's crazy. It's so silly, and just like,
yeah,
no matter what, I feel like there's always going to be a Nazi in a Mel Brooks film,
right?
Which is his whole thing, right? It's the conversation about making fun of the Nazis in a way to reclaim the atrocity.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about I feel like there were a lot of, like, it wasn't just one, but there was like a couple times in this film where it had to be pointed out that they're not gay. Did you also catch that?
So that's the only like issue that I kind of had with the movie, is that there is like, we're not really punching down because the conversation is around race, but whenever there's a moment for like homosexuality or queer people in general, it's like, you silly little faggot. Like, okay, like, yeah, sure, I'm like into it, but like there's no reclamation of it. There's no like turning point for these characters. It's, if there's ever a gay thing, it's like, I'm not gay, don't worry, I'm not
Yeah,
gay.
there's the moment between Jim and Bart. There's the moment, but even with Mongo, and then at the
Yeah.
end, there's like all of the dancing men. But
Well-
and if you're gonna be a dancing man on screen, then of course you're gonna be gay. And then all of the outlaws, you notice they all paired up. So it's like, oh, if you're bad, you are gay.
Gay people are bad.
Yes.
True TTV. Gay people are bad. No, but it's 100% true. It is the only thing that doesn't really get its comeuppance, and it's the only thing that isn't really, it's the only thing that feels like it's punching down. Because again, the story is crafted to be a conversation about this, but this is the only thing that's constantly like, oh, who can we make fun of? Gays. Like, that's the only thing we can really do. I'm not gay. Don't worry, I'm not gay. Is that to say I didn't love the French mistake dance sequence? That is not to say that.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with it. The director being this fucking femme daddy walking up on stage and being like, no, you fucking idiots, let me show you how to do this dance. And then he's like literally verbatim stamping his foot to the tempo. He says, watch me, faggots. And then starts dancing in this. He's like, you stick out your butt and do, and that's how you do the whatever. And it is so funny to me. Because, I mean, obviously it's punching
and then
down.
he falls in the fountain.
And then he falls. And then he fucking falls. And then he's like, you know what I mean? Fucking do it, idiots. Like, I said, and then he's like, action. He's like, wait, no, let me get off the stage. Fuck. And he's like this silly little femme daddy director guy. And it's so, because to me, I'm obsessed with it. It means nothing in the movie. And if anything, it's like intentionally derogatory, right? Like, I know in the context of the film, none of these queer people are meant to be seen as fun or cool. They are literally just the butt of the joke being punched down towards. But I love a loose F word. Like, I love it. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's so, like, especially when it's so phonetically, like, just like, it's crispy, and I love it. And so, I mean, even early on when he says Kansas City faggots, I was like, oh, I love that. Like, I know it's supposed to be mean and bad, but like, ooh. And then even in this gay man, like, calling the crew that, it's just, everything about it was just like, I love this and I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Contextually, hate it. Obviously, I think it's like a huge negative, and just like for a movie that is so intelligently diving into difficult conversations around marginalized communities. What year was this? I guess I'm not fully surprised.
It's 74.
74. I guess I'm not fully surprised that, like, it's like, well, we're gonna bash on someone, and like those queers over there, like,
right,
who cares? Nobody cares about them, because like literally nobody does. And I'm not surprised, but I'm also just like, come on. You guys are smart.
Yeah.
You guys are making a smart film about the ignorance of the masses when it comes to marginalized communities. You are literally making a movie about it. And for that to be just like the queer people being just the butt of the joke constantly.
Even in
like,
the producers, right? A big thing was punching down on gay people. So I feel like this is kind of a theme. And even in like the remake too, that's something they doubled down on, which they did not do. But I mean, the new one is very heteronormative.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Could you imagine?
Could you
imagine if they did a French mistake sequence in Paws of Fury?
But yeah, like you're so right, because it is so intentional. Like one of the things I love is like, it's not just we have the railroad workers in the beginning and then we forget about them, right? Like when Bart is like, I have a way to lift people up, right? Like I'm gonna do that because I'm in this position, and he secures like a home and a place and like land ownership and everything, which okay, for the other workers that he was working with, right? For the other railroad workers. And there's like, oh, we'll take everybody but the Irish. Just kidding. We'll take everybody, I guess, if we have to, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to save us. And that's the other thing about like Rockridge is I like that they are only they're not even allies. They're only okay with these people existing as long as they are serving them. Even
Yeah.
if, like, that means giving them some autonomy, they get something in exchange. And I think that that's a really good point to keep in there, because it's not at any point where it's like, we've changed. It's just, no, you are going to do this service for us. It benefits us to include you in our community, so we will do that. But if you at all stop being beneficial to us and our community, you don't belong.
Yeah,
Right?
it's a reminder that you are a pawn, you are an object, you are a piece in helping us solve what it is that we need to be solved. And momentarily, you're on our team.
Yes.
As soon as it no longer serves us or the tides change, we were never close and we were never in cahoots. You simply exist as a piece, as a prop. We will kill you at first chance. Like, when this turns, we don't see you as a person. We still don't. And that's like the whole, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Also, I didn't like the massive amounts of brown face here in this film. Mel Brooks himself posing as the chief.
That is a huge, huge issue here.
Yes.
Because it also, like, we understand what this movie is doing, and we've like praised, just in this conversation you and I have had, we've praised it for doing it, right? Like, we understand that this is an attack on racism. It's a conversation about the absurdity and the disgustingness that is racism and racial prejudice,
while upholding it
exactly.
against
And so
indigenous peoples.
Exactly. It's frustrating, right? And this is where I like get back to like the overuse of these racial epithets in the movie, because it's like, yeah, you get it and you understand what's going on, but it's kind of like a white person being like, well, I can say that because if you say it enough times, it holds no meaning. So you can still like have the idea that like, yeah, these people are bad and we have this story, but it's also like, come on, why are we doing brown face? Like, why? What is the joke? Like, what is the point of that? For a movie that narratively feels very intentional, what is the intent behind that as a necessity? Because it's a choice, right? Everything's a choice.
Right.
Why that?
And also, I want to point out that Burton Gillum, the person that played Lyle in that very heavy, uncomfortable scene, the first scene that we saw, apparently was just having the worst fucking time and was like, would not say that word and was like, just not doing it. And it was like disrupting the whole thing, because he's like, I don't feel okay saying this. I don't want to say this. I don't want to say this. And Cleveland Little, who plays Bart, had to be like, hey, it's okay. You're playing a character. This is a scene, like, I want you to know that you can say this to me in this context right now, because this is a scene. You are playing a character, and I know that this is not you. If I thought that you were going to say this and mean it, I would be in jail right now or something, like, like I would beat the literal shit out of you. So yeah, that first scene was not the actor that's perpetuating the majority of those racial epithets was not like, yo, I'm in on it. He's like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this.
Listener, if you have not seen it, if you get the chance to watch it, it is so brazen and abrasive. Like, it is so weird because it literally is out of nowhere. It's like, it's like the, hold on. That fucking TikTok or TikTok.
Oh no, Eric's lost it.
No, hold on. It's like when somebody does like and you know what, I think this, and then it's like a bomb exploding sound. It's like and this and this. That's what it feels like. Just like every other fucking word, and you're like, whoa, that was a lot. And then they keep going, and it's like the whole opening scene where you're like, what movie is this? Like, what am I really watching right now? It is so like, it makes sense why the actor was like, I don't know if I could do this, because like, fuck, I don't know if I could watch this. It's like, it's a lot out of the context of knowing what's gonna happen and what's coming, the overarching story. It is a very confusing introduction. It's a lot. Holy
It's a
shit.
lot. And the scene immediately after that is we go to Headley and the boss, I forget what his name is, the white boss who
Oh,
like was
Taggart.
like Bart and his friend are like literally sinking, going to die in quicksand, and he's like, "Oh no, we got you!" And he pulls up the hand cart
Like,
because that's
yeah.
$400, and doesn't even like pay attention to the fact that these two men are dying.
And then he throws
Um,
a shovel at them and he's like, that's enough rest. Get
yeah,
back to
you
work.
got your break. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
But like we pan over to him and it's very intentional. I mean, like he again is fondling Lady Justice. He has a literal medieval headsman outside that's like hanging people. And it's like, what is this? What is happening? He like hangs a horse. Like it's so wild and silly. And he's like literally hanging a disabled person just for being disabled.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's a commentary on the silliness of that kind of thing. And I think it's also a commentary
Absolutely.
back on like the Holocaust, like a conversation about like how disgusting and bizarrely inhumane that whole process is. And I mean, obviously the whole character of the hangman, he's just like, yeah, I'm just here. I gotta go home at 5 o'clock. And he's like, can you squeeze in at 2 o'clock? I can try. Like, treating it in such a mundane daily task kind of
Yeah.
way when in fact it's a line of people waiting to be murdered by this man.
Right.
Very very bizarre and very funny.
And I like that the headsman wasn't just like a normal person. Like he literally is there in like full medieval garb.
Yeah.
Like he's very out of place, like again showing that like that type of violence and that type of like how unnecessary and arbitrary
And
and
how
like
old it is. Like, what an
yes.
old way to think. What an uncomplex and like meaningless thing that this process is. Like, we know now. We've learned that this is so archaic and completely inhuman, but the character being like literally looking out straight from the medieval times is so it's funny. It's like, yeah, of course he would. He's from that. He's backwards. He's dumb. Like, he does not see this. He does not know, because sane people would not feel this way. And even
Right.
this character in conjunction with the colonialist white men who are like telling him to do this, right? Like, they're, at least in the context, smart enough or of world, of time enough to know that this is a bad, silly, old, archaic idea. And they're just using this timely character as somebody to do their bidding, as like a glorified light switch, because he doesn't know any better. But that's the insidiousness of these white colonialists, is that like they understand that he doesn't know any better, and so they're treating it as such a flippant thing. And that's part of their plan. That's part of the deal. That's part
Right.
of how they're going to succeed or attempt to succeed in this case. And again, just another step in Mel Brooks reiterating the fact that these people are bad and evil and like
And that
intentionally
capitalism is
malicious.
bad.
Yes.
Capitalism and colonialism and all of these things are bad.
And again, which makes it just so like much more of a bummer when he's like, gay people should die. And you're like, wait a
Wait
second.
a minute. Hold
Hold
on.
on. Hold the fucking phone on that. Or it's like, yeah, the gays run Hollywood. And it's like, yeah, but also like, why'd you say it like that? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, you said it weird. I heard an F word in there. What is that about?
Hmm.
Again, still love the word, but
Maybe that's not your word to use, Mel Brooks.
yeah, for Mel Brooks, yeah, I know. And I tweeted this today actually. It was the clip of that, and he's like, watch me fact like on the stage, the director. And it's the whole like clip of him dancing. And I made a joke that it's Ryan Murphy in every pitch meeting he's ever done. Because he's just like some gay pitching the gayest content and being like, you need to watch, like they will watch and you watch me, and la da da, like it's so stupid.
Another iconic scene in this film that I didn't know was canonically the very first time that this had happened.
Oh yeah.
Um, so the scene where all of the men are sitting around getting ready for the next day, all right, we got to get geared up, and everybody has beans, and these 20 cowboys around this fire just fart up a storm. That's the first time that a fart was ever used in cinema.
Or I mean, it's like quite literally a 3-minute, no exaggeration, like 3-minute scene of men at a campfire farting, tooting, rootin' tootin' cowboy, bean eating flatulence.
Okay, and you know what's funny to me is there is in San Francisco at the Musée des Mécaniques there, and I know I mispronounced that, I'm sorry, but there is a penny arcade machine where a lot of those there are like these little dioramas where you put a coin in and then you see like this person on a stick move. My personal favorite one is the Opium Den. You put like
I'm obsessed.
Oh my god, and it is
super
like
wild.
so sad, and I don't understand how this was made and like a thing. But anyways, so if you're in or around San Francisco, go and check it out. But there's one that basically I think that machine inspired this scene because it's like songs of the West or something, or like the cowboy song or something, and you put the coin in and it's like they're all sitting around the campfire farting like in this like turn of the century penny arcade machine, and it is the funniest thing. So every time I watch this scene now, for whatever reason, if it like ever comes up, I'm like, oh, it's that machine. This is what inspired Mel Brooks. This one.
It is, yeah.
Anyways, that's what I will forever think of. And it is so stupid and so silly.
Yeah. Two of my favorite jokes. One is like when Gene Wilder, Jim and Bart like first meet, and he's trying to prove to him that he's a Waco Kid. He proves it that he was a Waco Kid, and then Bart's like, he says something, and then Jim like holds up a tin. He's like, "Look how steady this is after all these years." He's like, "Wow, you could really be something." He's like, "Yeah, but I shoot with this hand," and he like pulls up his other hand, and it's just like flailing everywhere. It's silly, simple, but it's effective. I really love that joke. And then obviously this is one that keeps getting used, but I personally will never not find this funny, is when Von Stutz is trying to seduce Bart. She says, "Let me slip into something more comfortable," and then proceeds to slip into one of the most uncomfortable looking corset showgirl pieces that she can barely sit in. And it's so silly. It's just like, I love that joke so much.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
I also want to say that those hand carts that we see them using on the railroad in the beginning, I have, again, I used to work on a railroad, and I have used one of those, operated one of those. And this is something that you'll never notice unless you have been on one, but look at their foot placement on that one. When they're like, pumping back and forth, if they take a half a step back, they fall off onto the railroad and they die and are going to get crushed by the cart or hit their head on the rail and die. It is terrifying. And those things fucking haul ass.
They do.
And when they're hauling ass, you're operating it, right? So when it hauls ass, like the bars like go up and down, like faster, 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 faster. It is so hard to hold on, and you have no other choice but to hold on. And it's terrifying. You can't step back. You can't do anything. There's no other. So the fact that they were like dancing around on this thing, I was like, oh my God, they're going to fall. Oh my God, this is so scary. And it's also awful when the brakes don't work on it. The end.
Yeah, I could imagine that. That is so scary.
It's terrifying.
Jesus.
But also
they look
very
fun. They look cool. Yeah, they look like a lot of fun, but also
but just keep in mind, it's harder to run than it looks, y'all.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me.
I think that's all I have. Yeah, I'm happy we watched it. I'm happy I have a little bit more context for the movie, because like literally in my head I was always like, "Ooh, that's like the racist movie," but it's kind of the opposite, and I'm happy that like
it's a critique on racism, and also, and the thing that gets me about this movie is it's supposed to be a spoof of Westerns, because like there's the Ride Off into the Sunset, there's like structurally this is exactly how a Western typically goes, but just turned on its head, right? Which is cool and a neat idea. But in Westerns, Indigenous people are often slighted and killed, and all of these things. And so even though we don't see any of them being killed, and we don't like there's no one that's like, oh, you're here to save us, white man, right? Like, we don't have that. We still, again, have, there's still the butt of the joke. And I think that
Yeah.
that's my one thing, or
Well,
one of my things.
same. I mean, it's one of the pitfalls of commentaries and stories like this. It happens so frequently. I mean, most recently, it's part of the reason that I wasn't really watching The White Lotus for a while, because like for as much of it's a conversation about like colonialism and destination colonial culture when it comes to like white people going to indigenous places, like, and there's commentary within it and there's like social commentary about that. It's still a show that kind of perpetuates the idea, right? Because it's like largely a white cast who's doing it. Like
Mhm.
the actions sort of unknowingly reflect the thing that it's commenting on, and this movie is exactly that. Like it is commenting on race and on racial prejudice and racial injustice, while simultaneously being prejudicial towards other communities without necessarily intending to. At least I hope it's not like, obviously with the gay people, that is an intentional punch down. There's no question. But there's just a hope that you can, like, for a movie that seems like it's very much trying to do something intentional, you would hope that they wouldn't, like with the brown face and the way Native communities are represented in the movie, like you would hope that it's not intended. But again, it still happened. It's still perpetuated. It's still a part of the movie. So for as much good as this movie does, it still does bad. While building the perfect palace in a cat-rolled feudal Japanese landscape, high-ranking official Ikachu makes plans to destroy the town of Kakamucho as he feels it's ruining his view from the palace. After his first few attempts to force the current residents from their homes fail, he convinces the shogun to appoint Hank, a dog, as the new town samurai, hoping the town's racism will cause chaos, allowing his thugs to take the town. After a less than welcoming party, Hank becomes the student of the reluctant, drunken ex-samurai Jimbo. The town residents continue to be hostile towards Hank until he wrongfully takes credit for taking down an outlaw named Sumo, sent by Ikachu to cause trouble.
Hank lets his newfound popularity go to his head, ultimately driving a wedge between him and Jimbo when Ikachu convinces him to go to a party for the evening, giving his henchmen the perfect opportunity to destroy the town. Hank returns to the town to find it and his reputation in ruins, but manages to convince the town to stay and fight for their land. Meanwhile, Ikachu recruits every bad guy he can find, while Hank and the town set a trap for his new goons. After the battle, the shogun shows up and catches up with Jimbo, his old personal samurai, and learns of Ikachu's actions against the town. Another fight happens, this time over a giant jade toilet, but together the townsfolk and the shogun's men save the town. Hank goes back to being Jimbo's student, and a child is named Town Samurai.
Bow, 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 bow. I cannot believe that this is like Blazing. It is Blazing Saddles. Like it is a remake of Blazing.
Yes.
I cannot believe it. Truly, Jess, the way that I gasped at some of these moments, like we didn't really talk about it in the first one because there isn't really a reason to, but in the context of this movie, there is a reason to. When Bart is first entering the town as sheriff, there is somebody on the roof who sees that he's black. He's the first person to see that he's black. He calls down to the town and says, he's an N-word. But every time he says the N-word, somebody hits a bell. And so the guy down there is like, oh, he's like, I forget like what the misunderstanding. He's like, oh, he's nice? Yeah, he's going to be so great. And he's like, no, he's and then bell. And they mishear him every time. But the joke is they keep donging the bell every time he says the N-word. That scene is in this children's film beat for beat. Like,
except he's a dog. Like some of those jokes literally are pulled from like, not joking, when it's like a loose remake. This is not a loose remake. Like
no.
they took the script, they changed it to cats and dog, which for me doesn't work because those are completely separate species. We're not talking about race.
It is, yeah.
And it's also very appropriative, at least to me. It feels like the white dude stumbles into Japan and is like, but I'm going to be your new samurai. And it's like, wait, but you aren't
It
like that on top of the Mongo line where he's like, from the first one, like, only pawn in game of life, right? Like, or like there's some of these things that are just like beat for beat, line for line, taken from Blazing Saddles and put here.
and it is so weird to see because of, again, everything we've discussed about Blazing Saddles being this kind of caustic, very bizarre spoof on racism and cowboys and westerns as a whole. So seeing it in the context of this movie, line for line, again, obviously those words are changed. It is just so weird to me to watch, right?
Yeah,
Like, I almost prefer if this movie was a loose retelling and not a tight retelling.
absolutely.
A very specific, really, truly, the only things that have changed are the fact that it's cats and dogs, not white people and black people, the fact that they're in Japan and they're samurais, and that it's rated PG instead of R. Like, and that it's animated and that it's not a live action. Like, it's so close to Blazing Saddles. It is so jarring and so strange. And I like,
And a lot of it
whoa,
for me didn't fit because like
no,
the
it's
things that they
so weird.
changed, like it was weird, especially having watched Blazing Saddles right before this, right? But then hearing those same jokes with a new context didn't necessarily make it good or make it land. And then there's this whole thing about Emiko, the little girl who like is clearly the one that like she's the stand-in female for the movie, right? Because we have her, we still have the racist old lady, and we have the mom who, like, for some reason wants the dog, apparently. But we have her, and she is the most capable, but then is like 7, and we name her the samurai. And I'm like, why are we don't even like really get to develop her
It,
character. She's just around and she's like badass, but we don't really get to see her do anything. But we also don't get to see Hank do anything. Hank is fucking awful. And Hank is, when I was like trying to write my synopsis and looking at other things online and stuff, it's like, oh, this down on his luck dog. It's like, okay, down on your luck is one thing. You don't go to a whole other culture and appropriate that and decide to make that your identity without doing any of the work and then taking all of the credit. And then like everything about Hank in this movie, in this context, bugged me. And the fact that this is sometimes shot for shot, beat for beat, like copying Blazing Saddles, but you're saying cats and dogs are white people and black people, like that equivalent. Like for me, that doesn't work because those are two absolutely different.
well, yeah, it's also why I really don't like this movie. Because it falls into the same trap that I feel like a lot of kids media falls into, where the people telling the story don't trust the kids. Like, not to be whatever, but I feel like I would rather show, this might sound fucking crazy, I would rather show a kid Blazing Saddles because of its commentary on racism. Like, it's very, kids are smart. Kids can pick up and are more perceptive than you think. So the fact that like we're doing fart jokes and making a pizza over a fire, and it's like I don't know. As a whole, this movie doesn't trust children, especially in its watered down metaphor for racism. Like, it is so far from the idea that it just no longer really makes sense because we're throwing in the notion that they're also in Japan. And so is it like, okay, since Japan is now a conversation around culture, what exactly, it's just cats and dogs, but it like, I feel like it gets so, I don't know.
Well, and the world
It's
that
kind of,
Hank comes from isn't like, that same era in like America where he's from or wherever, right? It
yeah.
is a city that he's in, like a present day city that then he's like, oh, well, I'm going to go play samurai over here. And like in the original, like, and this is where the watered down racism, like metaphor, because like a big thing in the Mel Brooks, and because this is also Mel Brooks, so I can't say that. But a big thing in Blazing Saddles is Bart is just a person. And,
Yeah.
he's capable and he doesn't need to be taught how to do anything. He can just do it. And he's capable. Rides in with his Gucci saddlebags, looking hella good on this horse, like hella good, hella confident, hella capable. And he's not a doofus. Like, he's
Yeah.
so smart. He comes up with all of the ideas. He is the one that is like literally like holding the town together, even though it's trying to destroy him. Because a big part of the first one is he was sent there to fail, but he's actually capable and he's actually good. And they just thought that because he's a black man, he's not gonna, he's not gonna last.
Yeah.
Right. And in this one, this dog is like such a doofus and doesn't and complains so much, takes credit for things that he doesn't even have any business doing. He's like, oh, I don't want to go out there. That looks scary. Like, you want to be the samurai. This is what the samurai does. You can put on the clothing, you can hold the sword, but like when the going gets tough, you get going, or you
Yeah.
are just so self-congratulatory over all of this stuff. Like, he's not a good hero, and he doesn't make that point about like, I'm just a person like you all, like, and I feel like because of that, it's like I fucking hate this movie.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's where the turning point for loosely gets thrown into the title as like a caveat to the film, like it's a loose remake, because the character is unrecognizable for a movie that's literally pulling scenes nearly word for word. The character is unrecognizable. It takes away every ounce of like charm and autonomy that this character had. Everything about Bart is invisible in this character, right?
Yeah.
Like, it does not exist. Whereas some of the other characters, pretty close. Some of the other characters are like, yeah, that 100%, sure, ruthless or a little bit like conniving, whatever. This movie does not get it, and it sucks. And
there was like 8 writers on this too, Mel Brooks being one of them.
Yeah,
and I was just like, for all these people involved, nobody was like it felt like they just really wanted to tell the same jokes, but like, how can we make this acceptable? You know what I mean? Like, they did the least to try to make it like, because even some of the jokes that were like contemporary or supposed to be meta really didn't fucking land for me. And there was too much of it to where it just grew old and tired, even within the first 20 minutes of the film. Like, I was just like, I don't even care about any of this. You know what I mean?
Did Paws of Fury fucking come out this year?
Yes. It came out like 2 months ago. Eric's face. Everybody.
I literally thought this was from like 2008.
Oh, Jesus.
It truly felt like a movie from like 2008.
I would say,
Did it
yeah,
not?
like even like the early 2000s.
The animation looked like some of the animation I saw, and I was like, oh, well, that makes sense for the year. What?
You mean the year? 9 animation studios that worked on this? Because there wasn't just 1 or 2. There was like...
Oh, Jess, this movie's bad.
Yeah.
I was giving a little bit more leeway and credence just from the fact that it's a little bit older.
No.
But if this movie just came out, Jesus.
And we're still like, they're still punching down on queer people. Did you notice that too? Again, where they're like, oh, I'm not gay. Or like, there was a couple of lines like that. And I was like, in 2022, this is what we have decided to do. Okay, cool.
It's just, oh no, this movie sucks. It changes the context for me. Knowing that this is a modern film. This is a film that just came out.
Baby.
It's brand spanking new. Wowzer. That sucks. Because, I don't know, like, just trust children. Like, what the fuck? Like, why craft this like goofy little, I mean, it's capitalism, it's the industry. I understand that it's like,
sure,
I understand, but it's so annoying that is part of the structure. Like,
and why
trust children with a conversation about race? What is wrong with that? What is wrong with having discussions about the way the world works? Teach it, talk about it, give that information to children so they can start learning from an early age that yes, these are constructs that exist. Let's talk about how they are wrong and how they are bad for society. Like,
I would have
it,
rather seen them
what
use
the
different
fuck?
breeds of cats, right? Like, so I feel like that
That
would
would
have
have
been a
been more
much better
apt to the
conversation.
metaphor. I cannot believe this movie came out this year. Like,
Yes.
my whole context for this film, I was like, oh, this was for when Michael Cera was like more famous. So in my head, around 2010, where he's like still kind of a young guy, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense for this movie. And for the other cast, because when I heard Michelle Yeoh's voice, I was like, oh, good for her throwing this in like at some point in her career. Like,
Sam
that's
Jackson,
cool.
Ricky
What, oh,
Gervais.
the fact that Gabriel Iglesias is in this, I was like, oh, so that was back when he was still fairly popular. I mean, Mel B is also in it, which is super sick, and that actually changes
Yeah, we do
some
love.
things for me. But
Wait, hold
the
on.
fuck?
Wait, Mel B. I thought we were talking about Melanie B from Spice Girls. So I was like, oh my god, she's in this, and then I went to the thing and I was like, no, she's not in this. Never mind.
Is that not? That is Scary Spice. She plays the giraffe.
Okay, amazing movie. I'm sorry.
She
I take
goes,
back all of
yeah,
my
she goes by Mel B.
criticisms.
Like, that's her name, but like her alias for Spice Girls was Scary Spice. Yeah.
Sorry, well, there's also Mel Brooks. So I was like, are you
Oh.
calling Mel? I was like, oh wait, did I
did not even catch
misunderstand?
that. No, that's so. Oh,
Okay.
and my
Scary by
close
Spice.
bestie,
Yeah. Okay.
my close bestie Mel B.
Oh my god.
That's so funny. Yeah, literally. How interesting.
While you're processing this, let me also bring up the fact that Hank is looking down on others while asking them to see past their bias. He is constantly putting other people down if they disagree with him. He goes for the cheap shot when, talking to Jimbo about like, well, you can't even get a birthday party, right? And he just like keeps getting shittier and shittier as he goes through. He's also says like, I feel like you can't train me. You have a weight problem. You're diabetic, all this stuff. So we're also fat shaming, queer shaming. And these are things like if Hank is supposed to be like, I understand that, that they maybe want this character to go on more of a journey, but that wasn't, to me, that doesn't really get the point of, Blazing Saddles and what it was and the conversation it was trying to have about racism, right? So, and especially in the way that it's presented, because he's just being a fucking asshole to everybody and punching down at like whenever somebody doesn't like him, he's like, "Oh well, you suck," like, "Oh well, you suck," but like. Again, like we're supposed to feel for this character, and it's like I don't understand because he's actually a bad dude. He's a bad dog. He's not just down on his luck. He literally left to go be a samurai because he's like, I can be a hero. And I understand that he, supposedly grew up in like this area and was very poor. They even say like very poor. Like it was like the most like surface level description of like his background, but in this very poor city, and he was treated really mean. And like, so I understand being in that environment, maybe he has to work through some of those things, but he never works through some of those things. He never grows. He never does anything that like shows him in that hero light. So I'm glad that he's not named Samurai at the end, but in my opinion, he shouldn't even be there. He shouldn't be there. He's just so bad.
He's a bad lead. I agree 100% with everything you said. He's not likable. He's constantly like doing the opposite of what he's saying. His whole predicament in the first place to get there is exactly right. It is a mess. And like, why is he there? Why is he suddenly this? I'm happy he's not named Samurai at the end too. Like, he doesn't deserve it. Who the fuck even is he? He's nobody. He's nobody. He deserves nothing. If anything, he's just caused more problems. That's it. That's the deal. I'm really struggling with this knowledge, Jess. Like, it's making me more mad now because Blazing Saddles was written, and I'm not joking, 50 fucking years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly 50 years ago, that story about racial injustice and racial prejudice was written and produced. Mel Brooks, the same person who wrote that movie, is on this. And the metaphor that we're throwing into the conversation, a conversation that was so cognizant and so clear and so concise 50 years ago, written by the same person, is now whittled down to cats versus dogs. Y'all. It's been 50 years, and 50 years ago, you were so on the nose about how fucked up these systems are and how shitty this is. But now it's like, 50 years later, and there's not a better way to like have that conversation with children, especially now, especially after the last 2 years, especially after the last fucking 10 years. There's not a better, more succinct or like intelligent way to have a conversation about racism with children than to pull a fucking 2003 move and say it's cats versus dogs. Like, that's so silly to me. And that's why it's like blowing my mind that I'm like, this movie is recent. Like, again, if this movie was 2004, I would say, cool, great, makes sense. I get it. I think that that's a great metaphor for the time, especially at the time, the way we taught children. But now, that's really what we're doing now. That's so bad. It's just annoying because it's so simple. And I know Mel Brooks is very smart. And so it just bothers me that like the most simple, mundane, almost like, maybe I'm getting too far, almost antagonistically like mean-spirited, to think that kids aren't smart enough to like get it. It's just like so like cats versus like, no. There is some it's just annoying. It's annoying
This
as
whole
fuck.
movie felt very first pass.
It
Like very like they
did.
wrote this in 2004
It
as like
really
a
did.
concept, and then they were like, "You know what? Let's go back to that. Let's just make it, cuz like I remember it being pretty good. Let's just do it. Let's do the whole thing." And then, to see these names attached to it and
It's
stuff,
like
it's so insane to me.
it's like me opening up my fucking Celtex profile from like 2011 and being like, "Oh, that pilot that I wrote when I was fucking 19? Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's make that." No, throw it away. Burn it. It's bad. Nothing you can do will change the fact that it's bad. No punch-ups, no changes. It's a bad script. Get rid of it.
Also,
try again.
in this one, because again, the Blazing Saddles original movie was making sure
Jesus.
that we knew not only white people are bad, but capitalism is bad and all of this, right? And in this one, the Shogun is like, "Oh yeah, this guy's bad. I'm going to help you," right? Like we're watering all of this down to literally the bad guy is flushed down the toilet. He flushes himself down the toilet is the resolution of the entire thing. He flushes himself down the toilet. Can I say that again? He flushes himself down this giant jade toilet that he has made himself because this is the epitome of
And I don't want to get too crazy here, but like that seems really fucking problematic.
Yeah.
Like jade as this sort of holy stone being carved and whittled into a toilet for the sake of literal potty humor seems like a really first pass bad and dumb idea.
With pooping in the Zen garden, like that's their litter box, and then they rake it and like nothing happened.
Let's not do let's not do it. Kung Fu Panda already did it and did it better and more intelligently than you're doing. Not to say that it was necessarily correct to do it that way, but it's much better than this version. They've already had an entire franchise of the film. It's been successful. Why don't we do something other than that? Let's not do it. Let's just not do it, especially if we're not going to do our homework first, especially if we're not going to get some consulting on this. Why? Like, you could reset it. Hey, here's a great idea. What if we set it in the Wild West? Interesting. If we're already doing a straight fucking remake, why don't you just make it cowboys again? Like, I don't know.
Exactly.
It's just annoying. It's annoying that this is a recent movie, and I can't get over it.
It won't be like it won't feel as appropriative, right? Again, like it's like there's this like the one of the original titles for this, I believe, was like Blazing Samurai, right? So if they made Blazing Samurai, it would be Mel Brooks goes to Japan and decides that he's going to be a samurai and just beats up on everybody. Like, if you take this character, because also the dog is like just so fucking entitled. He's so fucking entitled and he's so fucking wrong at like literally every turn. I cannot understand why they decided that this was like literal cats versus dogs, like you said, but why also is this character going to be so fucking awful and never have any any sort of growth? Like, this movie also was just so quick, and it felt like they just wanted to get all of the one-liners out, and the one-liners didn't mean anything. So it was really quick. We didn't hang on anything, but it was each line was to get to the next punchline, and nothing happened. But then when things happened, they didn't make sense, and I was just lost. Like, I don't understand.
It's a bad movie. It's just a bad movie. It lost me at so many turns. There's a Rotten Tomatoes review that I feel like sums it up pretty well. It says, Paws of Fury is precisely as inane as its premise makes it sound. Think Kung Fu Panda, but blander, though it has been cobbled together with a certain honest doltishness that tends to play well with its young target audience. It's literally...
Is there a username we can attach to that?
Oh, yeah. Is there? Robbie Collin of the Daily Telegraph, a UK critic.
That's spot on.
I could not have said it better. It's literally that. Like, is it a kids movie that like some people might like? Sure. Is it a mess? Absolutely. Is it a mess, especially when it pertains to it being sort of a retelling of Blazing Saddles? Absolutely. I'm also seeing like some other people's responses, like for a film that like almost fearlessly had a conversation about racism in the 70s, like in a way that fearlessly being the operative word, they kind of almost even went too far
Right.
with the way that they were having this conversation. This movie did the exact fucking opposite, and similarly went so far away that it also became offensive with the way that it presents Asian cultures and the way that it just kind of belittles and mutes the tradition and nuance. Like, it tried so hard to not be that other thing that it went the complete opposite way and then ended up being a messy, little offensive nothing film. And that's just kind of it. That's just kind of it. Ooh, what a stinky, stinky, stinky thing. I don't think
I have nothing else to say about this. I'm just so upset and disappointed. And I'm glad that it was only 85 minutes.
Yeah, literally. What a treat. But even then, whoa.
Shall we do the outro?
Let's do the outro. God, what a shit
I can't believe
film.
you didn't realize that this just came out.
It is quite literally blowing my mind, because my frame of watching this film was centered around the idea that like this came out in Michael Cera's heyday. It's casted as if it came out in Michael Cera's heyday. It's animated like it can, like everything just lined up and made sense. I was like, no, this movie was from 2007. That's it. End of story. This movie came out in 2007. This movie came out right before Kung Fu Panda, or around the same time as Kung Fu Panda, and got swept under the rug like The Illusionist and The Prestige. Two magic movies. One is going to sweep the other under the rug. So be it. This is that for Kung Fu Panda and Kung Fu Panda 1. Yes. It became the franchisee. It became the name. Jack Black is a bigger star than fucking Michael Cera, and we all know it. That's why it won. But no, this movie came out in 2022, and that's a fucking joke. That is so weird, and my brain cannot process it, and I don't necessarily even believe it. I think this movie got shelved. It was made in 2002. I think it got shelved. I think this was supposed to come out in the same year as Shrek, and I will stand by it. That's what I think. That's what I think.
And we're back.
We are back. We made it back. We've traveled all across the globe today, Jess. We've been everywhere.
Every time.
Every day. Every day I write the book. 100%.
I have no idea what you're referencing.
It was a song.
Okay. I think I got that.
From another time, and by another time I mean some other time than now, because apparently I am so lost on this timeline.
I mean, because you really still think that it's like 2007.
I literally don't fucking know what time it is anymore, because I was so fucking convinced, and now I'm just rethinking everything. Everything is a mystery. Fuck. Like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay. We did it. Blazing Saddles. Who was this for?
Blazing Saddles. Honestly, I'm just gonna say it's for Mel Brooks. Like, I don't think I necessarily even have any sort of quippy conversation about like, it's for racial justice, or it's for like blah blah, because it's still a messy movie. It's still a little shitty, but I do think that it was well intentioned, and I think it's a I feel like it really helped Mel Brooks's career in solidifying him as like an intentional storyteller, especially when it comes to like farce and spoof and the way that he likes to make films. So I'm gonna say it's for Mel Brooks. Who do you think it was for?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to say that any Mel Brooks film is for anybody other than Mel Brooks, because it is like
It
so intentionally him. And we've talked about like his way of processing some things, and also like I don't know, he very much has a brand, and he very much does in every film push you to the boundary of acceptable
Yeah,
or of like uncomfortability. And I think that that's one thing that, like, even though it's like, oh god, like, I do like the idea of making white people uncomfortable and
yeah,
having to sit in this, like, verbal abuse and just take it. I think that that's just something that's inherently him, is just making audiences incredibly uncomfortable,
yeah,
and that's part of his own healing.
yeah.
But again, was this his story to tell?
Even if it wasn't his story to tell, like with that in mind, why tell it this way? Like I understand why, but like with that in mind, then if in this specific style of telling the story, is it your story to tell? It's a whole thing. I understand it, but yeah, I feel the same way, and I think it is for Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I did. I did and I do. I think Blazing Saddles is a good movie, especially given the context of it as a whole. Um Again, my history with it was literally that opening scene and I was like, what the fuck is this film? Like this is
Right.
cool. I don't know if I want to watch this fucking movie. This is a lot. Like, whoa, holy shit. Like what am I getting into? Watching the entire thing, full context, I think it's a good movie. Again, everything we've discussed, but yeah, I liked it. I did. I thought it was, I think it speaks volumes to like a movie that's very clearly like white people are bad people in this time period. Like they do and have done and continue to perpetuate the most horrendous acts. And here
Like
in your
so
fucking face.
nonchalantly.
Yeah, it's just so casual. Look how fucking bad you are. White, like look how shitty all of you got. Like look at the systems that you uphold. Look at the systems you've created. Look at it. Just look at it. And because that's kind of the entire movie, I'm like, yeah, yeah, good on you, good on you, Mel Brooks. So yeah, I like it. What do you
Yeah,
think? Do you like it?
same. I do like it, and I like it a lot more than I thought I did or would.
Same, yeah,
Again, especially after, like, so I'm glad that I was able to watch it and kind of like reclaim what this movie is in my brain,
yeah,
compared to the people that I know that had liked it, or like, the parts that they would only reference and stuff like that. And the reason that I like it is because at literally every point, white people look bad and awful and antagonistic, violent, opportunistic, just like literally just the casualness of the violence that they perpetuate and how far removed they are and constrained by like these arbitrary systems that they uphold, like the toll booth, right, like these sorts of things. I really like that, and I like that the only good white person in this was just Jim, that didn't really care and was also like dealing with trauma of white people needing to be the best also, right? Like, but again, like it didn't center him. He was very much the sidekick and kind of barely there. Like, I didn't expect that, especially for Gene Wilder being such like a
same,
big name.
yeah.
Who he wasn't even supposed to be that character originally, actually. They had another person cast that was an absolute drunk, a drunk,
Oh,
I forget who it was. And he was drunk on the first day there, and they were like, okay, you're fired. And they brought in Mel Brooks. But anyways, or I'm sorry, they brought in Gene Wilder. But I do really like this movie, even with the shortcomings that we had talked about.
so I guess initially it was he offered it to John Wayne, and John Wayne
Ew.
said fucking no,
Of course he did.
and he said it was too blue, which is why he said no. The blue humor was not for his family-oriented image. Gig Young was the person who collapsed on set from
okay. Richard
being
Pryor was
drunk.
supposed to be somebody in there.
I get because I know Mel Brooks had consulted with Richard Pryor, whether it was for the comedy itself or like the content or for the role.
Oh, he was supposed to be Bart. That's right.
He was supposed to be Bart. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, could you imagine that movie with fucking John Wayne and
Oh
Richard
my
Pryor?
God.
What a weird. You know what? The movie's good. Love the casting.
Yeah, we don't need to
leave it.
see
We don't
what,
need to change it.
what it was going to be.
That
What
would
it
have been
was
fucking
good.
Weird.
Okay. So,
Ugh.
Paws of Fury, the film that came out in the year of our Lord 2022.
I do not believe you. I don't believe you. I just don't. I don't.
Is this
I'm
new,
a Paws of Fury
interesting,
truther.
or the same, progressive, regressive? How are you feeling about the cinematic masterpiece that has come out about a month ago? 2 months ago. 2 months ago.
It's new technically. I don't think it's interesting, and I don't think it's the same. I think it's incredibly regressive, both in content and character. It really it missed every mark in a way to tone down the conversation about otherness and about marginalization. And whittling that down to a conversation of cats versus dogs, I think is just a disservice to children, a disservice to storytelling. And I think it's just a bad choice. Yeah, new technically because I guess it came out this year and not fucking 16, 17 years ago. Like it should. It sounds like it should anyways. So I guess it's new technically, but outside of that, yeah, it's just a regressive piece of nonsense media. Like I don't mean to keep sort of belaboring this point, but like it is a nothing film that would have been a nothing film in 2007. But like I'm so floored. The word I want to use is flabbergasted. I'm flabbergasted at the notion that this came out this year, just because it's just not good. It's not good. It's unfortunately just like a big fucking fart. It's a big fart. And that's just it.
Totally.
What do you think? How do you feel about all of that?
I feel like it's not new. I feel like it's very old. It feels old. Like you said, it does feel like it's from the early 2000s. Like the way that the jokes are lined up, how quick the plot moves, but doesn't move at the same time. I don't think it's interesting. I feel like they tried to make it the same, but like by trying to, make sure that they have this very intentional line or this exact scene from, Blazing Saddles, like really just held the film back. It's like those were the points where they're like, okay, we have to include this, and this. How are we going to write a story around this? What is this going to look like? But they didn't give any thought into what made Blazing Saddles, the commentary. What is this saying? Is that this isn't cats versus dogs? That's not the conversation that we're having. And as progressive as, these parts that we're talking about with Blazing Saddles were, it took all of those things out and it just made it such a regressive, like reimagined story, because it wasn't reimagined around the things that were important about, like, the values or the social commentary or anything like that. It took all of those things out, and that wasn't centered in the film, and that's why it was just like, oh, we gotta have the fart joke, we gotta have the the banging on the gong, when they say it's a dog, we gotta do this. We're literally going to put this into cats and dogs. I can't tell you how fucking awful that is. So yeah, like this is just awful and regressive and old, and
it's also
I'm
just boring
really
as hell.
disappointed. And so boring.
It's so boring. Like
I like
come on.
paused it and didn't come back to it for like 5 days. I went to Galaxy's Edge in between, and especially after the joy that I felt at like holding my lightsaber that I had made myself, coming back to this pile of shit was just like, wow.
It's so weird. Like, why this? Why now? Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it feels like the wrong time for the wrong film and the wrong, like, what a weird movie. It's, yeah.
Who was it for, do you think?
Who is it for? I don't know. It's for fucking shitty parents. It's for shitty parents who don't know how to like occupy their kids' time and who also don't know how to correctly like talk to their children about difficult subjects. Like, it's just a nothing. I don't know. I don't know. It's for shitty parents or nobody. Like, I just don't. Who is this for, Jet? Like, who did this movie get made for?
I got it. Are you ready?
Yeah,
The
you
trash
say it.
man. This is who this is for. This is for the trash man. This goes directly into the garbage
Oh, for
and
him
is
to
taken out
take.
into the landfill where
I was-
DVDs and
I was like, why would you subject the trash guy to this film? But
Oh,
you
no,
mean then like
because
to physically
joy
give
that-
him to throw away?
Yes, and the joy that he will feel at doing you the public service
Oh,
of
God.
ensuring that this film is as far out of your mind as possible. That is
Yeah.
who this is for.
And I just can't handle the fact that it was directed by 3 people, written by
by, like,
7.
8.
Yeah,
Executive
is-
produced by like 25.
Unfortunately, it is a witches Robert Zemeckis moment. Too many
Mhm.
fucking cooks, too many ideas, maybe not enough anything.
Yeah, I agree.
It's bad.
It's very bad.
Somebody on Rotten Tomatoes just their their critique is morally reprehensible. Period. Slay. Could
Yeah.
not agree more. Absolutely, yes.
Who was that?
Who is that? That was Martin Tsai of AV Club.
Absolutely.
Morally
100% agree.
reprehensible. Yeah,
Love it.
true. Bad. It's bad.
Well, Eric,
We did
to the
it.
question. Did you like it?
No, I didn't. I didn't like it at all. I think it's a waste of time. Go watch Blazing Saddles instead. It's a much better film. Did you like it?
The fact that you were like, don't show your children this, show them Blazing Saddles instead.
Not
Like-
I'm not to be like wild, but I'm like that gets to the point of
It
like
does.
the issue way more cohesively and intently, because a kid's gonna see that and be like, why are all these people so mean and so bad? Like, why are they bad? And then the movie explains why they're bad and continues to tell you why they're bad and you should not be like them. Whereas this movie says nothing.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
What a mess. What
And with
a fucking
that,
mess.
we are finished.
We
We
did
did
it.
it. Thank you so much
Welcome-
for listening, everybody. We really
Yeah.
love and appreciate you. We watched this again, so you don't have to.
Bow, bow, bow. And thank you for joining us on a very interesting episode of the show of is this really a remake? And the answer was yes, it was. Please also, with that in mind, please don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us so much. We're doing it, and it really helps us. So like, please, thank you.
And you can write into us at NOTstalgiaPodcast@gmail.com with anything that you want to see. We have some fun episodes lined up for you from people like yourselves that have written in and said, hey, you should do this. Social
We're
media
very
is
persuadable.
on fire. We're on there. We never post. Maybe one day we will. But you can follow us there too.
Maybe one day we will. We'll see.
Artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre. Editing is by Danny Barkley. And thank you again for listening. And thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical. Goodbye.
Bye.
Ta-ta for now. TTFL. Wait. TTFN.
FN.
Wait, talk to
TTFN.
you later. TTYL. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is more than just a show.
It's a conversation of growth,
Of trauma
Of culture.
of intention.
and of change.
The Momos and the Appas is a weekly conversational podcast from the NOTstalgia Network dedicated to discussing the Avatar universe as folklore, episode by episode.
I'm Eric Lefebvre.
I'm Dr. Amber Jones.
And I'm Jessica Tercero. Join us weekly as we dig into all things Avatar and Korra, including Uncle Iroh's hot bod versus his war criminal history.
Avatar Aang's well-meaning cultural revisionism versus Zuko's performance of toxic masculinity. masculinity.
How ultimately Katara is the savior and the hero of the story.
Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the NOTstalgia Network.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.